Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And this one is delicate enough that the person who asked it, we're doing this without them present so that we can talk about it, in the abstract. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future work. Sydney works with me as our chief of staff at Bloomberg Beta. And so the question we're going to tackle today is, I've got a work opportunity. It could be a job, it could be starting a business, it could be a client also. Let's think of it expansively, but the person who I would work with is a friend. And so the question is about that. And let me just give a thought, and then Sydney, I'll kick to you, which is, I kind of think and I've worked with friends. I started a company with a good friend. I have done plenty of investments in friends' companies. And I think it involves the following uncomfortable question, which is, if push were to come to shove, which is more valuable to you, the friendship or the professional opportunity? Because push may come to shove, and it comes to shove a lot. Like, I'd say the percentage of cases where there end up being an issue is much higher than the percentage where it doesn't. And most people tend to not want to think about this question. They think to themselves like, oh, I'll work it out or whatever, blah, blah, blah. The number of friendships I've seen ruined over this stuff, the number of companies I've seen, business opportunities I've seen ruined over this stuff is really high. And so if you value your friend more than the business, that's good to know going into it. And it sort of drives it. But I don't know, Sydney, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think it comes down to, are you able to talk about your finances in a way that's both comfortable and uncomfortable? I think whenever should I work with a friend, as in, should I go join my friend that's working at some big corporation and be their desk mate, which is a totally different conversation than should I start a company with a friend, for example. Right. And I think when it comes to starting a company with a friend, sometimes the going gets tough when it comes to money. And it also means that maybe you need to increase your salary. Maybe you guys are both pulling salaries from the same pot, and maybe that's a different, salary bandwidth. So there are so many complications, and life can get in the way. So if you aren't able to have those conversations about finances, about how they need to be set up, both in the immediate term and in the long term, then I actually would say no. You should not work with them.
I think that's a great way of putting it, is like, what are the conditions under which you shouldn't do it? Well, if you can't talk about the uncomfortable stuff up front, and one of the resources that a founder in our portfolio recommended, I think it was maybe the founders of Strong Suit recommended, was this book, The Partnership Charter. That's like a bunch of questions to ask you and your partner. I think it might even be a marriage book, but it maybe applies to this. And when you say finances, Sydney, I think what I hear you saying is the uncomfortable question of your personal finances. Of
That's right.
Well, I need my salary to be X by this point or else. And oftentimes it's the unstated, by the way, particularly in male friendships. It's just something I have more experience with than, I don't know, female to female friendships, obviously, or other genders. But I don't. In male friendships, often I find that people just assume we'll work it out, and therefore don't have the difficult conversation that really I think they ought to be having. And it'll be way easier to have the conversation before it's an issue about, like, what will we do if we're running out of money and I need to quit in order to get a salary, ... Just like every hypothetical you can come up with is worth having. And if you can't do those, then definitely don't work with the person.
Yeah, certainly. And I think also, but it's like mostly personal finances, but also when you're starting a company as well, it's how you're going to distribute your finances, right? And so if two co-founders don't totally align and they're also friends on how they want to spend that money going forward, it's going to be an immediate roadblock, because it's one of the hardest things to do in any relationship, friendships, personal partners, business partners, negotiating your salary. This is not advice about this. I mean, it's a tough talk. And I think when it comes to working with a friend, you really got to be able to have it.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing I'd say is, you bring in all those considerations. The other consideration to bring in is, what kind of friendship is it? Mm-hmm. So, Sarah, my wife, I used to say, like, oh, such and such is a friend. She's like, you're like a venture capitalist. You like talk to people for a living. These people can't all be your friends. And that's when I kind of came up with this idea in my head of, like, well, Eskimo maybe it's apocryphal, have 100 words for snow. Maybe I should need 100 words for different kinds of personal relationships that I have with people in the business world. And so when I think about, for example, the company that I co-founded, the venture-backed company that I co-founded, the person I started it with was a friend. She was a friend, though, who I met in the context of we worked together previously. So we had a professional first relationship to start. And, the truth is, in our case, working together in a company really deepened that friendship. And now we're friends regardless of working together. She's like a sister to me. But I think had we started out as being primarily friends first, it would be very awkward. And here's an example of where I could prove to people that it's awkward is if you've ever had an inheritance conversation with somebody who's like a family member, it's like, oh my gosh, they're all so loaded and so difficult. And of course, that's also complicated by grief and loss and all kinds of other stuff. But that is, on some level, it is a business conversation because it's a conversation about money and about how to manage things. But it's clearly in a context where the personal relationship came first in those situations, or almost always is. And that's an example of how difficult it can be. And so unless you're prepared to sign up for that level of difficulty, if you're like, oh, it's too awkward, I'd rather not think about it, it'll probably work out okay, you're signing up for a world of pain.
Yeah. And if you have that thought of like, it's awkward, but this person does bring a lot of value and I think we could build something incredible together, I still want to do it, I would just say bring in a third party to discuss that with you.
That's
We
a great idea too.
Founder coaches to all of our founders.
A lot of founders coaches specialize in that. I think that's a great idea.
Exactly. And have those conversations with that third person from day one, right? Figure out what those pinpoints are and then
right. And you may also decide, just to name it, not all friendships are more important to people than all business relationships. If you're going into something with somebody who's like your high school buddy, you're like, look, really, we're doing this because we want to make a lot of money. Just know that in your own heart, and you can maybe talk to them about it. Like, this is a business first and try to have a conversation with them, but it doesn't have to be one way. There's no one friendship fits all.
That's right.
Parting thoughts?
No, like with everything that we say, Roy, be open and honest, have those conversations, rely on your community and try and make the best decision, but definitely go into this one, eyes wide open.
Yeah. And again, the reason it's not advice is we're not telling you what to do in a particular situation. We're just giving you our own experiences. And for folks who want to see past questions we've answered in book form, online book form anyway, you can find them at thisisnotadvice.org. It's freely available. I think everything is free. So I just kind of never mentioned that, but there it is. And to be continued. Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you.